GMNA uses artificial intelligence for generated speech, visuals, and production. AI-generated content may contain errors. Please verify important information before making decisions or taking action.
Good evening, I'm Marc Beaumont. Tonight we'll break down Quebec's approval of a permanent roof for the Olympic Stadium and the latest on the storm-driven insurance losses sweeping the province. Traffic's heavy with lane closures, and we'll check today's air quality as smoke drifts in. Over to you, Emma.
The Gala de la Francophonie, hosted by Marie-Line Joncas and Albin Ivanov, takes place Friday evening at the Palais des Congrès, celebrating French language culture.
Tickets, priced at $35 for adults and $20 for seniors, include live musical sets, poetry readings, and a tribute to Francophone authors.
The ceremony begins at 7:30, will be streamed on Télé Quebec, and supports the Francophonie Youth Scholarship Fund for university students.
Lots to get to tonight, and the gala sets a wonderful tone for our community, but first the news as always. Good evening, Montreal. Quebec is set to greenlight an interior overhaul and a permanent roof for the iconic Olympic Stadium. The structure known as the Big O, the province's decision slated for today, aims to finally replace the long-troubled retractable canopy that has plagued the venue for years. Officials say the new roof will be fixed in place, ending the cycle of leaks and mechanical failures that forced numerous event cancellations and costly repairs. The renovation plan also includes upgrades to seating, concession areas, and accessibility features, preparing the stadium for future concerts and sporting events. Critics have long warned that delays and budget overruns could linger, but the government stresses that the project will move forward under a strict timetable. Construction is expected to begin later this year, with completion targeted before the next major international event.
Earlier today, workers finished removing the iconic fabric that has draped the Olympic Stadium for decades. The operation saw the bulk of the old canvas shredded on site, with only roughly 15% salvaged for future reuse projects. The stripped material will be repurposed in a series of community and artistic initiatives, officials said, as a key part of the stadium's ongoing renovation and repurposing plan. The removal marks a step in the multi-year effort to modernize the venue, which has long been a symbol of the city's sporting heritage. Engineers confirmed that the remaining fabric will be stored under controlled conditions until it can be incorporated into the new design. The project, coordinated by stadium management, aims to blend the historic texture with contemporary upgrades while keeping waste to a minimum.
Tomorrow, July 20th, a free retrospective lecture will celebrate illustrator Donald Caron, whose striking posters have defined the Fantasia Festival since 1997. The event, hosted at the York Amphitheatre on Concordia University's campus in Montreal, marks the festival's 30th anniversary. Organizers say the program will showcase a selection of Caron's original artwork, followed by a discussion of his creative process and the festival's evolution over 3 decades. Attendees can expect a glimpse into the visual identity that has drawn audiences to the genre-focused showcase each summer. Admission is free, and seats are limited, prompting early arrival for those interested. The lecture underscores the lasting partnership between the festival and the artist, highlighting how a single visual voice can shape a cultural institution's legacy. The 3-day celebration will also feature live screenings, panel talks, and a midnight showcase of classic genre films, drawing fans from across the island and beyond.
Severe storms that swept through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and the Montreal area in June have generated insured losses exceeding $1.1 billion, the Insurance Bureau of Canada reported. The weather system brought torrential rain to the island's eastern suburbs, flooding streets and forcing evacuations in several neighborhoods, while powerful winds ripped roofs and toppled trees across the prairie provinces. Adjusters logged thousands of residential and commercial claims, marking the month as the costliest on record for Canadian insurers. Officials said the combined impact of flash flooding and wind damage drove the extraordinary payout. The Bureau highlighted that the insured figure reflects only a portion of total property damage, underscoring the scale of the June weather episode across the 3 regions. Emergency responders worked through the night to secure flooded basements and clear debris, while insurers began rapid assessments to expedite payouts.
Pro-Anima Animal Shelter is grappling with a surge of abandoned pets as the city's moving season reaches its peak. Staff report roughly 25 animals arriving each day, a level double the intake recorded during the first months of the year. The influx, linked to families relocating, has stretched the newly opened refuge's capacity and forced volunteers to turn to temporary foster networks. Shelter Director Marie Leclair said the daily volume is straining food supplies, veterinary appointments and space in the quarantine area. City officials have not announced additional funding, but the organization urges residents to consider adoption or responsible rehoming before the next wave of moves. Community volunteers from the Plateau and Myland have organized nightly walks to calm the rescued dogs and cats. The situation remains ongoing, with each new intake adding pressure to an operation still finding its footing. Later we'll dive into the Westmount Mayor's 7 ethics charges over his remarks, and what that means for our city. We will be right back.
If you run a venue, a comedy night, a concert, a fundraiser, you already know the hardest part isn't the show. It's selling the seats. Theaterfiller changes that. In minutes, you're set up with your own ticketing page, QR code delivery, and a door scanner. No technical headaches, no middleman taking a cut of your night. Your event, your tickets, your revenue. Go to theaterfiller.com and fill every seat.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm glad you stayed with us. Now let's turn to Emma Leclair for the latest local stories that matter to Montreal.
Mayor Michael Stern of Westmount is confronting 7 ethics violation charges after a citation was filed with the Quebec Municipal Commission. The commission says the mayor used language that was disrespectful toward municipal officials and staff, prompting formal complaints. The allegations, lodged today, allege repeated instances of demeaning remarks directed at city employees and fellow council members. If the charges hold, they could lead to disciplinary measures ranging from fines to removal from office, according to the commission's mandate. Westmount residents are watching closely as the case proceeds, aware that municipal leaders are expected to model respectful conduct. The commission, which oversees ethical standards for Quebec's municipalities, will review the evidence and determine next steps in the coming weeks. The outcome will shape how local officials interact with their teams moving forward.
Quebec has given the green light to a new rail bypass that will skirt Lac Mégantic, adding 12.5 kilometers of track to reroute freight trains away from the town center. The approval comes 13 years after the 2013 derailment that devastated the community and claimed lives. Officials say the bypass will eliminate the need for trains to run through the historic downtown, addressing long-standing safety concerns voiced by residents and businesses. Construction is slated to begin later this year, with the line expected to be operational in the coming years. The project represents the province's most significant rail infrastructure effort since the tragedy, aiming to prevent a repeat of the disaster that reshaped the town's landscape. Transport Minister Jean Tremblay said the bypass will also cut freight delays and lower noise for nearby residents. Funding comes from the province and the rail company.
Today, the Quebec government announced a new funding envelope for Genome Quebec, delivering more than $30 million, but attaching a condition that the nonprofit slash several research programs. The grant represents only half of the sum the organization had anticipated, forcing it to rethink projects that support hundreds of researchers across the province. Genome Quebec, a private nonprofit that relies heavily on government contributions to sustain its scientific work, said the reduced amount will compel immediate restructuring of its portfolio. Officials indicated the funding will still enable core activities to continue, though some initiatives will be postponed or scaled back. Researchers and partner institutions are preparing for the adjustments as they plan the upcoming fiscal year, while the province watches how the cuts may affect ongoing genomic studies and related health innovations.
The province's fisheries sector received a fresh infusion as the Quebec Fisheries Fund was expanded to $50 million over a 5-year span. Both the Quebec government and the federal administration in Ottawa signed on to the increase, aiming to give fishers and related businesses new avenues for diversification. Officials say the money will back projects that move beyond traditional catches, encouraging aquaculture, processing upgrades, and market expansion efforts. With the fund now active, companies can apply for grants that target sustainable practices and innovative product lines. The move comes after years of lobbying from the industry for more robust financial tools. The Quebec Fisheries Fund will manage the disbursement, working closely with regional boards to ensure that smaller coastal towns benefit directly from the support. As the program rolls out, local operators hope the added resources will cushion seasonal fluctuations and open doors to broader export opportunities.
Smoke from the forest fires raging in Ontario is set to move eastward into western Quebec tonight, bringing a temporary dip in air quality for residents. Health officials warn that the plume could raise particulate levels enough to affect outdoor activities and those with respiratory sensitivities. Parents with children playing in parks and commuters planning early morning rides may notice a faint haze and a subtle odor. The wind pattern is expected to carry the haze across the border as thunderstorms develop later this evening, and rain showers are forecast to help disperse the particles by tomorrow. Authorities advise people to stay informed about local air quality alerts and consider limiting strenuous exercise outdoors until conditions improve. The situation remains fluid, with meteorologists monitoring the storm system that should clear the sky and restore cleaner air by the end of the weekend.
Now let's see what tonight's forecast holds for us. Over to the weather desk.
A powerful northwest jet stream is pulling cooler air into the city, setting the stage for a dry evening. On this date, the all-time high for Montreal sits at 30.6 degrees, recorded in 2025 during an unprecedented heat wave that pushed temperatures across southern Quebec well above normal. The record low is 13.6 degrees, set in 2015 when a polar air mass plunged southward, delivering a sharp cold snap that broke the usual summer pattern. By contrast, today's climatological average hovers around 26 degrees high and 16 degrees low, a modest swing from the extremes. The live radar shows a clear swath across the entire greater Montreal area, no echoes of rain or snow anywhere. This emptiness reflects a high-pressure ridge anchored over eastern Canada, with subsiding air suppressing cloud formation. The fast northwest jet aloft is steering any lingering moisture far to the north, keeping the city dry for the rest of the evening. Expect the quiet to persist until after midnight when the ridge begins to drift eastward. At 6 p.m., the sky over Montreal is clear, and the thermometer reads 25 degrees, humidity sits at 23%, and the wind is a gentle 17 kilometers per hour from the west. Pressure is near average but easing lower, signaling a gradual loosening of the high-pressure ridge that has kept the air stable. Aloft, a fast northwest jet stream blowing at roughly 170 kilometers per hour injects dynamic energy into the mid-levels, but the surface remains insulated from any lift. The UV index holds at 7, and the strongest gusts will reach 19 kilometers per hour from the west later this evening. No weather alerts are active. With the ridge still in place, conditions will remain dry through the night before the next system approaches, leading us into tomorrow's outlook. Saturday brings a sharp shift as the high-pressure ridge lifts, allowing a cold front to sweep in from the northwest. Expect a high of 24 degrees, a low of 14, overcast skies, and about 80% chance of rain through the afternoon. Sunday will be a brief respite. The front stalls, delivering clear skies, a high of 23 degrees and a low of 15, the coolest night of the period. Monday sees the front linger, producing overcast conditions again with a high of 25 and a low of 16. Tuesday's atmosphere retains enough moisture for a moderate rain event, 25 degrees high, 18 low, and 45% chance. By Wednesday, the system deepens, bringing heavy rain, a high of 24, a low of 18, and 75% likelihood of precipitation. And that's your weather. Remember, the local sunset is also available as a podcast. Listen anytime on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll break down today's heavy traffic snarls, preview the Gala de la Francophonie lineup, and preview the NHL season opener. We will be right back.
If you run a venue, a comedy night, a concert, a fundraiser, you already know the hardest part isn't the show. It's selling the seats. Theaterfiller changes that. In minutes, you're set up with your own ticketing page, QR code delivery, and a door scanner. No technical headaches, no middleman taking a cut of your night. Your event, your tickets, your revenue. Go to theaterfiller.com and fill every seat.
The biggest headache right now is the Honoré Mercier Bridge. A major jam is building, and trucks are barred from crossing, so expect long queues from the east side toward downtown. Drivers heading to the South Shore should consider the Jean Talon corridor as an alternative. On the same bridge, a moderate-level disruption adds to the slowdown, especially during the peak hour. Over on the Clement Bridge, a single lane is closed, nudging traffic onto the nearby lanes and slowing the flow toward the Old Port. Autoroute 520 sees a lane shut for overpass reconstruction, and the same applies to Autoroute 40, where a minor closure is in effect. Both highways will run slower than usual, but the rest of the network remains clear. On the ground, work continues on Boulevard Gouin and Henry Bourassa, and the Louis-Hippolyte Lafontaine tunnel is being refurbished. No transit strikes or delays are reported this afternoon.
First up, the Gala de la Francophonie, staged tonight at Théâtre Maisonneuve, brings Marie-Line Jonkas and Alban Ivanov to the Just Pour Rire stage for a night of sharp, bilingual comedy that captures the spirit of our city. Next, classical music lovers can head to the Amphitheatre Fernand Lindsay for Charles Richard Hamelin and the Orchestre Symphonique de Quebec's Northern Legends, a program that weaves Quebec's piano heritage with sweeping orchestral color. If you're hungry for flavor, the festival's street food continues at the Quai de Horloge, where more than 40 vendors serve up 150 dishes from around the globe, perfect for a sunset stroll. And for a little mindfulness, the Illume Festival rolls through Hudson, offering yoga, meditation, and a street fair that turns the weekend into a wellness playground. Whether you crave laughs, symphonies, street bites, or calm, Montreal has a moment waiting for you tonight. And now here's Jason with sports.
Here's the latest sports headlines shaping Montreal's teams and leagues. On September 29, the Canadiens will travel to Toronto to open the 2026-27 NHL season against the Maple Leafs, creating a Canadian showdown. The league also schedules the Oilers hosting the Canucks that night, highlighting two all-Canadian matchups to kick off the year. Sunday's Northern Super League clash saw the Montreal Roses claim a 1-0 victory over the Halifax Tides after substitute Chloe Minas converted a penalty in the 77th minute, delivering the decisive goal and securing 3 points for the home side. The Montreal Roses announced Wednesday that they have added two internationally experienced players, forward Marie-Yasmine Aladou and defender Yves Perisset, bolstering the squad's depth and profile as the club prepares for the remainder of the Northern Super League campaign. An international sports firm has injected $30 million into the Northern Super League, the Canadian women's professional soccer competition now in its second season, supporting its 6-team structure spanning Vancouver, Calgary, Halifax, Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa. The Canadiens have dealt forward Brendan Gallagher to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for future considerations, a move confirmed on June 29 that reshapes Montreal's forward depth and adds a veteran presence to Vancouver's roster as the off-season progresses.
Durghouse, the beloved pet supply shop on Shairbrook Street West in Notre Dame de Grace, is feeling the pinch of the new municipal parking meters that now charge for short-term spots. The owner says the change has shaved foot traffic, leaving shelves quieter and the neighborhood vibe a little less lively. Customers who once popped in on a quick errand are now deterred by the added cost and the hunt for space. Durghouse isn't just a store, it's where families find the right leash for a new puppy and seniors discover gentle grooming tools. In a city that cherishes its animal companions, keeping a local pet shop thriving means the whole community can walk a little farther together. And later, a heartwarming look at Montreal's animal shelter, where intake has doubled early this year, bringing hope to many.
If you run a venue, a comedy night, a concert, a fundraiser, you already know the hardest part isn't the show. It's selling the seats. Theaterfiller changes that. In minutes, you're set up with your own ticketing page, QR code delivery, and a door scanner. No technical headaches, no middleman taking a cut of your night. Your event, your tickets, your revenue. Go to theaterfiller.com and fill every seat.
On a breezy Thursday evening in Montreal Nord, the heart of the city's multicultural neighborhood, residents gathered on the steps of the community center as the Quebec Police Ethics Commissioner announced the opening of an investigation file into recent allegations of racism and discrimination within the police. Among the crowd were longtime shop owners, a group of high school students in bright hoodies, and a retired teacher who has watched the area change over 3 decades. The air smelled of fresh-baked baguettes from a nearby bakery, and a young mother lifted her toddler onto a wooden bench, eyes fixed on the modest podium where the commissioner spoke. She heard a promise that the inquiry would be thorough, transparent, and rooted in the community's own voices. When the commissioner finished, a quiet applause rose, followed by a surprising moment. A teenage boy stepped forward with a handwritten list of ideas for improving police-community dialogue, which the commissioner accepted with a firm nod. That simple act of collaboration turned a tense headline into a shared commitment to trust and healing. It reminds us that when a neighborhood stands together, change begins with conversation.
On a bright Saturday morning in St. Louis Square, residents gathered around the century-old fire hall that has become a symbol of the neighborhood's heritage. The building's brass doors, dulled by years of weather, glinted as volunteers from the local History Association polished each surface, while children from the nearby elementary school handed out homemade lemonade. Earlier this week, the province announced a modest budget for built heritage preservation, prompting several regional municipalities to describe the amount as peanuts. Yet the scene on the square told a different story. Mayor Levesque of the borough stood beside a volunteer carpenter pointing to a newly painted sign that reads "Community Restored." He smiled and said the funding may be small, but the collective effort is anything but. As the sun slipped behind the cobblestones, a group of seniors shared stories of the fire hall's first responders, reminding everyone that history lives not just in stone but in the people who care for it. In moments like these, Montreal's past is kept alive by the hands and hearts of its own neighborhoods.
Thank you, Montreal, for joining us on the local sunset. Tonight we celebrated the long-awaited approval of a permanent roof for our iconic Olympic Stadium, a milestone for the city's skyline. Stay tuned tomorrow for more local stories and fresh perspectives. Until then, keep the sunset in your heart.